see. Hey everybody. Looks like we're now live. I got the chat right here. It's all good to go. Today, I think I had World of Warcraft up. No, I don't. Just a live stream. Nothing's really going on. I need to get a second monitor so I can see what I'm doing. I actually have a second monitor. I just haven't attached it, and I should probably do that. But thanks for joining the channel, everybody. Appreciate that. So far, we have 0. That's okay. First one, I have like 17 followers. Is understandable. Yeah, I'm not really doing anything. But I have this spew some nonsense. Talk to the internet. But basically, I've been assessing some things, and one of them has been the relationship status between men and women and the parameters for what would be a viable date or not. And basically, it's called 3 sixes, but it's actually 4 sixes. So for women's standards, for their, say, generalized ideal man, would be 6 feet tall, 6-pack abs, 6-figure salary, and a 6-inch or bigger pecker. So I was thinking about that and how men don't have that type of standard or rule book or whatever you want to call it for women. So I made one up, basically, and I used that basis as my, we call it mask where I was from, but a catalyst or whatever, to develop what I've come up with. And basically, this is specifically for marriage material. In order for a woman to be offered a ring in any shape, context, or form, these 4 basic parameters must be met first. 1, she must be under 5'8", 5'6" even. I think the average height is 5'6". So if she's over 5'6", no go. No. On top of that, she cannot be fat or obese by any way, shape, or form. She must have a flat or almost flat stomach. You can have a little extra weight, a couple extra pounds. Who doesn't like a little cushion for the pushing? But in general, you should not be anywhere close to obese. What was the other ones? Money! If she makes over $30,000 a year, no marriage. That gives her too much power, independence, and freedom, and particularly the way the laws are, that is too much opportunity for any potentially, even if she's amazing, to absolutely screw the man over later on in life. So she, in general, must be reliant on the man financially. She cannot be independent. And the last one, if I remember all of them correctly, is she cannot have a literal and metaphorically a loose vagina. It must be tight. If a woman sleeps with 5 men, her ability to pair bond is lessened by 80%. So anybody who has had more than 3 partners, any woman who has had more than 3 sexual partners, do not marry her, do not offer the ring. These 4 basic parameters must be met first. Then we can look for actual red flags. Is her hair dyed? Does she have a bunch of tattoos? Does she have those really long nails? What's her attitude like? How does she treat those around her? How does she treat you? Her parents, her friends. Those are all considerably, or not considerably, but those would be the following steps to heavily consider a potential marriage or not. And obviously, based on the 4 basic foundation pillars of the parameters a woman must provide for a marriage, this is going to eliminate roughly 90% of women. 85% maybe. This is going to eliminate roughly 80 to 90% of women. Based on my random guesstimation math, I didn't plug in the numbers or anything. But since I know the average height and weight for women in the United States is 5'2", if I remember correctly. Even if it's 5'6", that's not going to matter, because the average weight is 170 pounds. Even at 5'6", 170 pounds, you are fat. By definition, you are fat. So especially if you're 5'2", you're going to look like that kid in Willy Wonka, the fat kid that got sucked up in the tube because he was too greedy eating all the chocolate and stuff like that. So you don't want that stuff in your life. Excuse me. So these are the basic parameters that I personally have come up with, and I'm essentially going to be starting to promote because I think this is, in fact, the correct thing to do. Apparently, as part of my rant, there's this quote. I never remember where quotes come from. Almost never. But basically what it says is, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And particularly over the last 100-ish years, with a particular focus starting in the 40s, I think, when women got the right to vote, I believe. And then in the 70s, in particular, when the feminist movement took off. I might be wrong about the 40s thing. There's something that happened in birth control. That's what it was. In the 1920s, I believe, birth control finally came out, and that allowed the sexual revolution to take hold in the form of the feminist movement. And this is where society started digressing, in my opinion. I forgot where I was going to go with that. So far, it's all facts, though. Anyway, so in the 1970s, you had this feminist movement that came out and started bashing on men, this, that, and the other thing. And even if it was legit at the time, it is now for a fact, corrupt, agenda-pushing cult, essentially. And so I'm totally 100% against that. Oh, I'm not saying power. So, particularly from the 20s to the 70s and beyond, women have had an extraordinary amount of power when it comes to relationships, particularly in the pre-stage of relationships, sex. The saying is, women hold the key to sex, but men hold the key to marriage. I think women have abused this power, this opportunity, this gift, and it has corrupted them in general to their core. There's a couple good ones here and there, but as a majority, they are corrupt. And apparently, it will take men, because women are not really standing up, it will take men to not participate. Essentially, I put out a tweet. They should take a vow of some type of celibacy. No relationships, no sex. You can go on dates. If the woman wants to wait 90 days, fine. You can wait 90 days. You're not doing it for the sex anyway. That's not what it's about. You're looking for a potential spouse. There are 4 pillars to a successful marriage from some random book I read. Love, trust, honesty, and sex. Okay? And that last pillar, assuming it's similar to, say, the commandments of the Constitution, those are arguably put in a particular order for that reason. And even though it is a pillar, it is the last pillar. That is the last part you should be focusing on. The other 3 are more important. And then the sex comes in, because you need to have a healthy sex life in order to maintain a monogamous relationship. Women should not be using sex as a way to weaponize or control the relationship or the man. It should not be done that. They are weaponizing their sexuality. Talk about toxic masculinity. I think weaponizing femininity is toxic femininity. That's what this is. I should tweet that. I have to use my phone right now for a camera because I don't have a webcam. It's on the way. But I will be tweeting that part out if I remember to. I'm pretty lazy with tweets because, in general, I don't even care what I have to say. Not to amount of effort that I want to like tweet it out or Instagram or something. It's super difficult for me because even though I have a lot to say and I think I'm right all the time and a narcissist and all that kind of stuff, it's just so much effort and I am inherently lazy. So that's that. So I do appreciate everybody for joining in. And by the way, if you find what I say being interesting, intriguing, or you disagree with me, by all means, let me know in the comments. If you do like this kind of content, please like, subscribe, and all that kind of stuff. Welcome to live chat. Remember to guard your privacy and abide by our community guidelines. Yeah, in general, I try and do those things. I don't know, is this like a journal? I think that's something else I thought about too, actually. I was watching this YouTube channel called, it's either Taylor or Tyler. I don't know. But Taylor the Fiend. And he was showing us a bunch of videos about depressed women, basically. I had to point to this too. Where was I going? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I don't remember. I definitely had a point. See, this is why I need people to interact with and stimuli to help keep me focused. Because my mind does sometimes go all over the place because I overthink things. I personally think I'm intelligent. And due to my intelligence, though, I overanalyze. And so I overthink things, and sometimes it creates a paralyzing scenario where I get in my own head, which prevents me from progressing forward, particularly in the realm of relationships. I've learned that upon a lot of self-reflection that obviously I was a problem. It's me, not you kind of a thing. And it definitely was me. So it took some man channels and some research and stuff like that to kind of figure out a lot of these things. Because I was caught up in the white knight Disney simp mindset, particularly being raised by grandma. There was this saying that you don't ask a fish how to catch a fish, you ask a fisherman how to catch a fish. And due to me being raised by grandma, I learned all of my, we'll call them seduction, techniques initially through grandma, and I had basically zero results, combined with overthinking things. So it wasn't until later on, the last couple of years, that I've had access to the internet and the channels existed with this kind of information. There's this Bill Burr skit that I saw. I've seen the whole stand-up, but you can find the skit on YouTube. Bill Burr, well, he has a lot of skits. What skit was I about to mention? See, I wish I could, like, rewind to see what I was talking about. Yeah, don't remember. Well, it's not anybody's going to see this, I don't think. Hopefully somebody in my past looks this up. Not my past. Hopefully in my future, somebody looks into my past and discovers this video. It'll be interesting to see what they take. See how I've changed over the years too and things like that. I've done a couple live streams on some other things, doing some experiments. But I'm actively trying, maybe that's what I was going to say about social media, because I don't really care about it. But I'm actively trying to create a social media footprint because I do want to go into politics, city council to start, maybe mayor, and things like that. So that's kind of what this channel is about. And unfortunately, due to circumstances of the West, there is a small overlap between politics and relationships. So this channel, we cover a little bit over the two, but there is definitely more of a focus on the politics part. Ugh. So that's also probably the main lens that I look through when assessing situations. I'm no psychiatrist or anything like that, but I have a particular, I believe, I have a particularly strong ability beyond the norm, whatever that means, of empathy. I believe I am extremely good at putting myself in somebody else's shoes or position and or perspective and think about what I would do if I was in that situation from the other side. And that usually allows me to see things from their perspective, which allows me to craft an argument to counter that argument, whatever the thing is. So sometimes intelligence, helps you out there, because when you overthink things to an extent, particularly when you're coming up to a debate, like what I do is I will say it's all in my head. I'll say a random sentence, not a random specific topic, but I'll say a sentence, and I will guess what the other side will say. But I don't guess one thing that they say. I will guess all the different things that they could say, kind of like a chess move. I try and think 2, 3, 4 plus steps ahead of my opponents, and so that way I'm prepared to deal with 3 or 4 of the most common or main arguments that I expect, I either based on experience know would be probably coming up, or that I think will come up. And every now and then somebody responds in a way that is slightly off from, it's like maybe a variable of 2 or 3 of them, something like that, like some sort of weird in-between area. But that's basically what it is. And, man, talking about in-between people. I'm not even stoned or anything. Stop drinking. I'm in the process of quitting marijuana. I haven't actually done it yet. But I haven't smoked now in like 3 or 4 days. So luckily for me, for those of you that don't know, I do not have an addictive personality. So I have this saying that I understand that I don't know. And one of my examples of this is I understand, keeping in mind I have no kids, I understand the loss of a child is heart-wrenching, if you want to be dramatic, is heartbreaking, is one of the worst pains you could possibly, emotional pains you could possibly feel. Arguably, you won't want to wish that on your worst enemies once you experience it, because you understand the depths of its magnitude and stuff. So I understand that it sucks. But I do not know what that pain is or feels like. For an example, a different type of example, for somebody who, say, has never broken a bone in their body, or has never got slammed on the concrete for any kind of reason, sports, a fight, you tripped, I don't know. Obviously, you can see that, like somebody tripping, like, I don't want that to happen to me. But when it does, then you're like, and you hit your head on, for an example, in the same manner, and you're like, oh, okay, I get this now. This is why I don't want to do it for sure, because I know exactly what that experience is like. And I saw this, to totally jump topics, I saw this other video, it was like a TikTok. It wasn't a TikTok. I mainly watch YouTube Shorts. And this atheist was debating this Islamic guy on reality and how do you prove you're real. It wasn't so much argument about God, but it was more about an argument about existence. And long story short, the religious guy won because the other guy couldn't formulate his argument well enough. I understood what he was saying was he was talking about a simulation and how do you prove you exist versus actually existing, like a Zelda, for an example, in the video game. Is he a real person? Does he exist? He's a video game. We programmed him. So now, how do you determine that we ourselves are not in a video game? One of the arguments that the Islamic man said is he pushed him, and he moved, and he basically said, if I didn't exist, how could I have pushed you? How could I have moved you? if you don't exist and I don't exist? Or if you do exist and I don't exist? Like, how could that happen? And the guy did not know how to explain, well, yeah, just like an NPC can interact with an NPC. If you're both part of the same simulation, that's why I would react to your, quote, touch, even though you don't actually physically exist. And then the obviously counter argument to that, which I think is the winning argument in this, which the guy was alluding to, but either didn't know or didn't say exactly and paraphrased it, possibly through not remembering or coincidence. I've seen actually a lot of wisdom from sheikh elders in like the Middle East, like on YouTube, that have like, village people react to amazing art or something like that, or relationships or whatever it is. And they have an incredibly insightful view on the topic. And even though they identify a trait, they don't always have a worm or term for it. For an example, Stockholm syndrome. Right? They might be able to explain Stockholm syndrome, and they know what it is, but they don't have a word for it or a phrase. So they have incredible wisdom. They just don't have the language associated with the wisdom like the Americans do, the West in general, which is super weird because we're like a failing society or something like that. It like to some extent I acknowledge and see the breakdown of the West, the fall, the collapse of the Roman Empire, if you will, because Rome was mainly defeated from within, not without. And that's a lot what seems to be happening here. So, because men are the bedrock and foundation of society, it apparently will be our responsibility to correct the wrongs that the feminists and women in general have created. Along with all the beta males and all those other simps and all that kind of stuff out there too. They're also part of the problem. And as a 100% full devil's advocate, in general, strong men, we'll call them alphas, 1%ers, things like that, they are also to blame because all evil needs to succeed is for good men to stand by and do nothing. And these strong men, now they're doing it, right? Over the last couple of years, particularly because of YouTube channel and the men's channels. Oh, the Bill Burr skit, that's what I was going to say. Where he talks about when you win the lottery, there is no guidebook that helps you deal with all the money or the responsibilities that come with becoming rich, famous, and powerful. But now there is, and it's these man channels on YouTube and how we are communicating and relaying information in an unprecedented amount of ways. To some extent, I think women are correct in the fact that men need to talk about their feelings, but it has backfired on them because what we're learning is men do need to talk about their feelings and stuff like that for mental health reasons, but you do not talk to women about them. You talk to your bros, your brothers, your homies, your father, other men. Hobo stranger for all I care. Hobo woman, I guess, at that point, because she's a hobo. But in general, you would not be seeking advice or guidance from them. You should not be vulnerable around them and things like that. They will use it against you. There's too much evidence to say statistically they wouldn't, because statistically they would. Way over 50%. So with all these different men channels out there and stuff like that, it's definitely shaking up the dating game. There's things like MGTOW and Passport Bros. And the whole world is changing. And like I said earlier, for like the 8th time, it will be men's responsibility to right the wrongs that are plaguing our society. Well, it's a good 30-minute episode. Ha ha ha. Just talk for 30 minutes. See? Because what you don't know about me is I'm super in touch with my feminine side. One reason why I talk a lot. I have a lot to say even though I'm not really talking about anything. I don't think. And, by the way, if you're just tuning in or something like that, you can subscribe, like, give a thumbs up, and all that kind of good stuff. Leave a comment too, especially what you think. I've recently heard this stance from this girl named Pearl from the YouTube channel Just Pearly Things. And basically she has taken the stance that women should no longer be allowed to vote. And I'm so glad that she's saying it, because to an extent, I've believed that. I have believed that. Is that a sentence? I believed that. I don't have to say that other word. I believe that to be true for several years. And now that there's finally a female kind of saying the same thing and is citing all the same reasons that I identified with internally and personally, it's refreshing to see that there are people and women that are waking up to the truth and are trying to spread awareness about relationships between men and women in general. So I definitely appreciate her for that. Yeah, that's that front. And so, on a different topic again, I was watching a Ben Shapiro episode, the latest one, just came out, I believe on the 17th, maybe the 16th. 15th? I don't remember how long I've been thinking about it. But I have been thinking about it. And because he said a particular quote in there that I really like. And I don't think it's going to catch on or have the same profound effect as his actual famous quote of "facts don't care about your feelings." But what he said was, in this episode, he said, in reference to what he was talking about, you're using the shades of gray to eliminate the colors of black and white. And that particularly struck an chord with me, and I started thinking about that. I have been now for several days. I'm still processing that information due to my overthinking capability asset. And I'm trying to... I understand the context of what he was talking about and how it can be applied and blah, blah, blah. But now I'm trying to think of where else it can be applied. Because obviously, based on the statement alone, it can be used in many different arguments, many different styles of arguments. And I don't know if it already exists, but I feel like he identified another fallacy, like a slippery slope or a straw man, where someone in particular is making a plethora of reasons to not identify black and white. One of the things I do when I debate people, based on what they say, the parameters change a little bit, but I usually jump to an extreme example on the spectrum, white or black. In general, I don't particularly like gray areas. I understand they exist and that there are most definitely gray scenarios. But I do like pushing arguments out to their most extreme to get the base or the core of what everybody finally believes. Or officially believes, or whatever. So, for an example, something on gun control. First, I would take a black and white stance. Are you 100% pro, you can get any kind of gun you want, bombs, not nukes, but grenades, tanks, firearms, right? Like, you can, no cruise missiles, nothing like that kind of powerful, but tanks and below. Or are you going to be 100% banned against guns? People are not even allowed to have BB guns, no squirt guns, 100%. We're going to go full extreme one way or full extreme the other way. And that's when people start getting rocky, because most people don't think about that kind of stuff. The most extreme example and what that would mean for the world and how it would be applied or applicable or plausible and probable. And then, once we determine white, black, whatever those are and the size and stuff, then we can add in the grays to figure out the in-between areas. Particularly, I would find this argument useful on things that are hot button issues, like abortion and gun control being the two big ones off the top of my head. Economic and foreign policy would be another one. The Ukraine war would be another way how you could apply this shades of gray. I think that's what actually Ben Shapiro was talking about. It may have been about the Ukraine war. I'm not 100% positive about that. Because I know the title of the video was something about like the Republican race is starting or has started or is in full swing, or he said something to that effect. Hopefully you can't hear my fan, but I'm getting hot. Well, I was born hot, but my body temperature is rising, making me feel hot because I always feel sexy. But yeah, so I'm thinking a lot about that and the different ways how it can be applied and used. So, and also too, I've been on this kick about 6 months now or so of this. 6 months? No, today's 7th month. I'm getting cold now. Yeah, no, it's about 6 months. I know. I think I started it. I know I didn't start January 1st. Maybe January 15th or something like that. And today being the 18th of July, it's about 6 months. 7 months, something like that. But I'm on this carnivore diet, and in the process of talking to several people to convince them to try the diet, that's another argument where there is also a lot of gray areas. Because there's a lot of mixed information out there. And so when anybody tries to justify any action, they're going to make it gray. Another version of this would be the ends justify the means. But I'm very familiar with the song, but I watched a reaction to it on YouTube, and it was a five-finger death punch, wrong side of heaven. And one of the lines in there is, I'm on the wrong side of heaven, but on the righteous side of hell, which ties into the path to hell is often paved with good intentions. I have no idea who says any of these quotes, by the way. See, I need focus. I need people. I gotta be on my podcasts and things. That will keep me focused. Wrong side of heaven, evil, and all it takes for evil to succeed is for good men to stand by and do nothing. So there we go. So in order to justify the means, when people know something's wrong, excuse me, they'll add in gray areas. Like, this is definitely evil, but, or we shouldn't do this, but. And then the question becomes, how many shades of gray are you going to add before you actually distinguish the color black and or white? And that's a lot of thinking, and most people do not delve that deep into any kind of thought. The ones that do have the well thought out and formulated opinions that you see commonly on social media and TV, like Piers Morgan, Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, Anna Kasparigan, Candace Owens, what's that guy? The other guy from the Young Turks, the founder, Chuck, whatever his name is, Alex Jones. Even if you disagree with some of these people and their points, these are people who are, craft may be the wrong word, but they are in fact dedicated to their craft and arguably are subject matter experts, which we call in the military SMEs, kind of like Hook's number one guy or whatever, SME. Yeah, well, I don't know how they spell it in the Captain Hook movies, Peter Pan or whatever, but it's SME, subject matter expert. So they are subject matter experts in this social media field, if you will. Even if they fuck up, like Alex Jones saying the shooting of Sandy Hook or whatever was all fake or something like that. Like, I don't remember the details, but I know he was in court and he trolled a bunch of people, and it was kind of vaguely hilarious to see them react to him. Kind of like the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trials, where particularly when Jason Momoa was on, that guy was hilarious. Love him. I think he's a little extreme. He just shaved off all of his hair for climate change. What did he do with the hair? Did he throw it away or did he donate it also? I don't know. I should tweet him about that. Just water. But I'm an adult and I drink a lot. So I like a big glass. I don't like normal size glasses. They're too small. It upsets me. Makes me have to get up and down from my chair 8,000 times. Or I'd rather just sit here for hours. Until I have to pee, basically. Yeah, well, I mean, like, overall, this is, I think, I gotta do this more often. I have basically 2.5 friends and 1 grandma, sister I don't particularly talk to, and so I have no friends or family. Very limited friends and family. I am kind of isolated. I wouldn't say lonely. That's not quite the word I would use. Because I am happy. Would I like more people to talk to? Yes. But it's mainly, I think, more about I have a lot to say and want to get my information out there, rather than an actual need for companionship. So I don't know how therapeutic this is, but having fun? I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm going to do this more often. I should create a schedule and things like that. And I gotta get the webcam. I gotta get the video editor for the non-live things that I not stream but record. The like the senator interrogations and congressman and YouTube clips and things like that. Yeah, so a like, comment, thumbs up, all that kind of stuff would be super interesting. Let me know what your thoughts are again in the comments below. If you agree or disagree and why. Particularly why. That's something that I really, really, really delve into, and I want the dirty devil details of why. A simple way to explain this, assuming you went to college, and I think they kind of teach it to everybody, but it's a term called cognitive thinking, which basically translates to thinking about your thinking. For whatever the topic is, why do you believe what you believe? What are you basing it off of? What evidence, being it empirical and or anecdotal, right? How did you get to that conclusion? And it's my attempt to seek and understand the logic behind whoever it is I'm talking to or debating, so that way I can find holes in it, or if I do find holes in it that don't make sense to me, I want to ask questions, and hopefully they thought about it, so they can then address those with well thought out things. But you can clearly see it on a lot of shows like what is it, Tim Cast in real life, or Tim Pod in real life, something like that. Tim Cruise, I don't remember. A lot of times when people go on like shows like his, they are not prepared, they don't know what's going on, and he can absolutely just obliterate them. Particularly in the last few episodes that I've seen, or skits and stuff. He's become extra aggressive, and I think it's the wear down of his demeanor on the show and trying to seek understanding. And particularly when he goes around and talks about it to other people, how they just deny and say he doesn't know what he's talking about, even though he literally has thousands of hours, I had to guess, at this point, thousands of hours of research. And scientists say it takes 10,000 hours for you to be considered an expert in a field. And if in this case, his expertise would be a host who debates people on cultural topics. And I don't know how often he strays into what different topics. Like, I don't think he's doing very many podcasts about the endangered ant species of Congo. I made that up. I don't think there is any, but something like that. Like he's mainly kind of focusing on, I think, similar stuff, politics and relationships, which is why there's some overlap, which is one of the reasons why I watch him. I don't subscribe to most people either, but I know the YouTube algorithm keeps track of what I like and what I watch, so they kind of just recommend things again. So I'll watch a channel, I'll watch 4 or 5 videos, 6, depending on what it is and how much I like. But then I won't see them again for like 2-3 months because I didn't subscribe. I'm not getting the daily posts or anything like that, daily updates. But then when YouTube says like, this is a new video, we think you'll enjoy this, I'm like, oh, I remember that. And then I'll sit there and I'll catch up on the 3 or 4 months that I missed. The thing of it, like a version of binge watching politics, right? Like, because politics is slow. So much like trading and foreign exchange market and stuff, you have to give it time to play out, so there's stuff to analyze. If you always try and predict the future, you're going to be wrong because there's too many X factors to account for. So that's why there's only a small window in order to predict a small window in the future. Very rarely can somebody be accurate outside of a couple years. There are exceptions though, like the downfall of Rome. Again, I'm pretty sure somebody said like, if this keeps going, all this infighting, we're going to implode. And, it may have taken 50 years or something, 100 years, depending on when the guy said it. But it did technically eventually become true, even if it was 100 years later. As long as he was right about the core reasons on what led to its downfall. So, that's that topic. Let's see. I guess I'll talk for 20 more minutes because I particularly know I can. So it's to loop back to a different topic, to an older topic. We have the carnivore diet, and I was watching this interview with Homestead How. I'm pretty sure is what it was called. And this dude interviewed this other guy called Dr. Chaffee, something like that. Very handsome doctor, no homo. From an upper body shirtless pic that I saw. Whew, I'm like, why are you a doctor? I'm not a bodybuilder. Well, obviously he's some type of bodybuilder, but he's not famous for being a bodybuilder, even though it looks like he could be, or a nutritionist or something. But he is in fact a neurosurgeon, which I remember correctly, some type of brain surgery. So very esteemed guy. And much like some other people I've seen, like Tim from Tim in Real Life or whatever it's called, and Ben Shapiro, who regularly talk about topics they are familiar with. This guy expertly set up and knocked down many questions, comments, concerns about the diet. And I could tell by the way he talked, like the other people I mentioned, he is experienced in communicating and relaying these ideas in a way that the general populace can understand. Because an example of this would be something like the transgender issue. It technically is a gray area. It is a very complex issue. There is a lot of gray inside of this issue. But, and I don't remember the rest of where I was going to go with that. See, stimuli. See, if I had like a host or something that's keeping track of my shit. Maybe like, Phil, you just said blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, oh, right. And then go into it. Instead of having to try and remember it myself, like Bill Burr clip. So he was very experienced in explaining things in a way that the general populace would understand. So with the transgender issue, like I said, it's complicated. But the main argument that people are wrapping their heads around, the kind of the simplified version of it, is the bathroom argument, which is essentially if your daughter is in a female's bathroom and an adult male walks in, a fully intact male walks in and whips out his penis, how does that make you feel? is essentially what's going on here. And do you think that's okay? Right, like that's that black and white scenario that I was talking about earlier, right? Black and white. Do you think it is okay for an adult with male genitalia, regardless of what gender they identify with, to walk inside of a female's bathroom and expose their genital for any reason, even if it is legitimate, say, just to pee? Although it's not like there's urinals in there, I don't think. Actually, that's a lie. I've seen people install urinals in female bathrooms now. Stupid. But that would be an example of that scenario. So, flat out, black and white, yes or no, is that okay or is it not? And so this doctor, like I said, is very experienced in how he relays a lot of this information. And some of the examples that he gave for the reasons to do the carnivore diet, according to him, and I'm taking a lot of what he said at face value because I have not seen the same studies, but just because he has credibility, I'm just putting my faith in him right now. But if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. Post a study if you've read it and or so I can read it. Link it to me, email it me, something. But again, I could tell by the way he said, or the way he spoke, he's experienced in this topic and debate. And some of the things that really stood out to me were things like fructose has the same psychological addictive properties and physical ramifications, similar physical ramifications, particularly to the brain and hormones and stuff like that, as meth. And since most of our food nowadays is processed, I wouldn't even say to some degree, to every degree, pretty much, that is a huge issue. And there is fructose and other various types of sugars that also are not good for you in just about everything we eat. There's even sugar in McDonald's French fries. So, pass. So personally, once I kind of learned that meth fact, it's a particularly solid, it's a singular, but particularly solid foundation for at least trying the carnivore diet, if not switching out all right. Or at least, minimum, eliminating sugar from the diet in its entirety. So that would arguably also, you can cheat every now and then. You can have pizza once a month or whatever. Not once a month, don't make it a schedule. But, if you're in school and the teacher throws a pizza party, whatever, have some pizza. Although if you're only eating meat, though, it'll probably make you sick. I wouldn't recommend it. I've done that. Don't recommend it. Grandma, for example, is lactose intolerant, and I'm not. And so when she eats too much cheese, she has all sorts of physical ramifications. And I experienced something similar for the first time after I switched to the carnivore diet, and then I had a cheat. I didn't have a cheat day. I did this working thing and a work day, and somebody bought lunch, and so I got a triple patty burger kind of a thing with the all the way. So lettuce, tomatoes, bread, mustard, mayonnaise, all the stuff. Everything, onions, put it all on there. And I knew to some extent it was going to make me sick, a little upset or something like that. But the overall, I didn't throw up or anything, but the overall just pain in the stomach, the gases that built up, and all the other things, I was like, why do you even keep doing this? Like, this is a pass. Like, as soon as something bad happens to me, not literally all things, but I basically give up. I'm like, nah, as soon as I perceive that something's not worth it, I can just stop. That's one reason why I don't have an addictive personality. Much like, for an example, being something like alcohol. I used to drink every single day, and most days excessively, compared to above average drinkers even. Particularly when I was in the military, I didn't realize I was depressed. It was a moderate level of depression that I could not identify. So that's one of the reasons why I drink a lot there. Plus, it's the culture thing and this, that, and the other thing. So when I got out, and I still drank for a little bit. But after I got out, not long after I got out, I had my first actual hangover. Where usually, like I used to be able to drink a liter of Jack in about 6 to 8 hours and not black out. I could do that basically daily. Even now, I burn through alcohol super fast. Well, I don't know about now. It's been 8 months. I haven't really drank. But previously, pre carnivore, every now and then I would still drink beer and stuff. And when I buy like a 6-pack or 12-pack or something, it would still take almost the entire 12-pack for me to get beyond the stage of, say, heavy buzzed. And I would wake up the next day, and basically my only side effect was being dehydrated. So I remedied that pretty fast, but just by making sure whenever I go to bed, I had like a jug of water or something like that right by the bed. So whether I woke up in the middle of the night hungry, having to pee or something like that, not hungry, thirsty, I'd also become having to pee, go pee, drink a bunch of water, and then go back to bed, wake up in the morning, drink a bunch of water, go get breakfast, start your day, good to go. But one day I woke up and had a headache. I don't think if I was sick to my stomach or anything, but the headache was enough, and I was like, this is no longer, there's now semi-legitimate consequences for my actions. Pass. And in particular, I have a gluttony problem. If you take the cardinal sins as a guesstimate on your daily percent of the sins you do and the percent you'd be going to hell, I'm about 3 out of 7. Every now and then, a fourth one comes up, like wrath. Somebody makes me angry, and I want to get revenge and things. Which definitely on those days puts me at the 4 out of 7 that I'm going to go to hell. Rather than 3 out of 7. So I'm not, right? I'm going to heaven. Close. I'm cutting it close. But based loosely on that, I'd be going to heaven. Yeah. So as soon as I got the headache, I was like, pass. This is not for me. But that is my huge problem, gluttony. To a point where I did the math. I was curious. And particularly when I was living in Hawaii, I spent $20,000 in 1 year. I was there for years. 3 years, I think. 4 years? 2 years military, 2 years civilian, I think. Something like that. Maybe 3 years civilian. But either way, I spent $20,000 a year on alcohol. Doing, shots, bars, clubs, things like that. So it was pretty... It was a lot of fun. But that's an example of my gluttony. Another example of my level of gluttony would be, eventually, through the military, I got into nicotine. And nicotine... I just realized we are not watching anything useful. Well, it doesn't matter. It's a vlog. And nobody's watching. Anyway, nicotine. At my height of nicotine use, the E-pens had just came out, and we had one of the big ones that basically looked like a dildo, but it had a dial on it where you could adjust the amount of nicotine you were getting. And if I remember the numbers correctly, the Marlboro Red cigarettes, which in general are considered, one of the highest nicotine cigarettes, water. One of the highest nicotine cigarettes that are out there, at 0.5, I believe. 0.5 grams, or milligrams, whatever it was. And this pen, maybe it's 0.8. And this pen, though, it could push it all the way up to 1.5. So that's where we all kept it. We smoked it was not just me, it was a group of us. I was the worst, though, because I did all 3. Most of the other ones only did 1. A couple of them did 2. But I was pretty much the only one that did 3 simultaneously. But we would smoke this e-cigarette. We worked 12-hour shifts. So 12 hours a day, we were basically inside all day smoking this e-cig, while simultaneously still taking actual cigarette breaks every 2 hours, which we were authorized to do. And simultaneously to that, I would also put a dip in. So I was on nicotine high in my office to come get a nicotine boost cigarette while ingesting dip. Like there was a lot of nicotine. At any point, I had 1 to 2 packs of cigarettes on me, and the pen, and a can of dip. And then once I got out of the military, it just wasn't in my environment anymore. Just overnight, I just stopped buying it. Because again, I don't have that addictive personality. I understand that addictions are tough, and I understand that a lot of people, due to impulse control issues, cannot just eat one cookie, for an example, and walk away. They can't just smoke a cigarette and then walk away after, say, what I was doing 3 years later, just smoke one cigarette and not want to smoke again for another 3 years or month or whatever it is. I understand that most people cannot do that. And that's another example of why I don't have an addictive personality. But obviously, I have a gluttony problem. That's probably the biggest issue I have, because everybody's traumatized, right? To some extent, what your parents do to you. And that's probably my biggest one. I was started as a child, long story short. Along with some other stuff, but... so that's most definitely where my mental disorder, when it comes to the gluttony in particular. Where I even had people around me, including like my boss, say like, you know you have some type of... Because I would do almost anything for food. Not almost anything. But my boss would be like, hey, would you be willing to come in on your off day? And I'd be like, only if you give me a free meal. Or I'll do it if you give me free food. And things like that. And eventually they were like, you know you have like a eating disorder thing. Like you're basing your life around. I'm like, oh no, yeah, no, I'm fully aware. And that's why I really kind of regulate it. Try to. Used to. Now that I'm on a carnivore diet, I don't have to calorie count or anything. And since I'm only eating meat, I don't have to worry about ingesting what amount of sugar my intake is. Or calories, cholesterol, things like that. I absolutely love it. I'm a super simple person. I don't like a lot of distractions. I don't like... Is it an hour yet? No. I don't like a lot of distractions. I don't like a lot of things that are taking my focus away from whatever it is I'm focusing on. Kind of, you can vaguely tell from my background and stuff. That's the light of the door, I think, on the wall. No, it's the window. That's the blinds. Okay. My bathroom light's on. I meant to turn it off, but I started this video and I don't want to get up. For another, like, 2.5 minutes. Yeah, so I particularly have, like I said, a gluttony problem, and that's something I'm constantly working on, which is why, once again, I like the carnivore diet, because I don't have to worry about how much I eat. To an extent, I can indulge in my gluttonous... Gluttony? Yeah, whatever. I can indulge in it. Because you just eat until you're full. So that means in general I can eat as much as I want, and as soon as I feel full, I can just stop, i.e. filling up the void that is inside me. Because that's one of the things I think that kind of separates me from, we'll call them normies, muggles, is that I have voids in me, black pits, if you will, but they're not bottomless. They, in fact, do get filled up. And that's, I think, a lot of what happens. That's why for like solid 10 years, pretty solid drinker, and then pretty much overnight just stopped. Same thing with nicotine, obviously, particularly heavy nicotine user, and 7 years roughly doing that. I just decided to stop. I just did it. What's some other addictive things that I've just stopped? Sugar. I mean, technically. Now, if there's something else more important than that. Well, I don't really remember. So, thanks for joining us, by the way, on me. Thanks for joining me. Nobody subscribed, watched, left a comment or anything. But anyway, for those that find it, I do appreciate you eventually tuning in and hopefully leaving a comment. And I guess we'll just wrap up, because I don't really have anybody to say goodbye to or anything. Otherwise, then thanks for finding me. And I will, or this Phil, will see you in the future.